Step into the sands of time with me, back to an era of pyramids, pharaohs, and power plays that would make a modern political drama look like a children's cartoon. We're journeying to ancient Egypt, a civilization that gifted the world with wonders. But our focus today is on its final and perhaps most fascinating ruler, Cleopatra. Now, when you hear the name Cleopatra, what comes to mind? A legendary beauty, a seductive queen wrapped in a carpet. The truth is so much more complex and captivating. Cleopatra, the seventh Cleopatra, was not just a pretty face. She was a brilliant strategist, a cunning politician, and a woman who spoke at least 9 languages, including Egyptian, something her Greek-speaking Ptolemaic predecessors rarely bothered to do. She wasn't just ruling Egypt, she was asterisk of asterisk Egypt, in a way her family hadn't been for nearly 300 years. Born in 69 BC, Cleopatra inherited a kingdom that was a shadow of its former glory. Egypt was rich, yes, a breadbasket for the ancient world. But it was also caught in the gravitational pull of a rising superpower, Rome. Her own family was a mess of rivalries and betrayals. Her father had been exiled and then reinstated with Roman help, and her siblings were constantly vying for the throne. It was a dangerous world, and from a young age, Cleopatra learned that to survive, she had to be smarter, bolder, and more ruthless than anyone else. Her first major move on the world stage came when she was just 21. Exiled by her younger brother Ptolemy XIII and his advisors, Cleopatra knew she couldn't win a conventional fight, so she took a gamble. The most powerful man in the world, Julius Caesar, had just arrived in Alexandria. How could she get past her brother's guards to meet him? The legendary story says she had herself smuggled into the palace, rolled up inside a carpet, which was then presented as a gift to Caesar. Imagine his surprise when, instead of a fine rug, out tumbled the determined young queen. This wasn't just a dramatic entrance. It was a power move. She bypassed her enemies and got a direct audience with the one man who could decide her fate. Caesar, impressed by her sheer audacity and intelligence, became her ally and, famously, her lover. With his military backing, Cleopatra reclaimed her throne. Their alliance wasn't just personal, it was political. She gave Caesar the wealth of Egypt to fund his ambitions, and he gave her the security of Rome's might. Together, they had a son, Caesarion, whom Cleopatra hoped would one day unite the two great empires of Egypt and Rome. They sailed up the Nile in a magnificent procession, a display of power and luxury that awed the Egyptian people and solidified Cleopatra's rule. For a moment, it seemed like her dream was within reach. Egypt was secure, its queen was beloved, and its future seemed tied to the most powerful man on earth. But the ancient world was unpredictable. On the Ides of March in 44 BC, Julius Caesar was assassinated in Rome. The news must have been devastating for Cleopatra. Suddenly, her protector was gone, and her position was once again precarious. Rome was plunged into civil war, and Cleopatra had to navigate the treacherous political waters to keep her kingdom safe. She returned to Egypt with her son Caesarion and waited. The power vacuum in Rome was eventually filled by two men, Caesar's adopted son, Octavian, and his loyal general, Mark Antony. And it was with Mark Antony that Cleopatra's story would become forever intertwined. Antony, now in control of the eastern provinces of the Roman Empire, summoned Cleopatra to Tarsus in modern-day Turkey. He needed her money to fund his campaigns. But Cleopatra was no one's subordinate. She knew the power of spectacle and first impressions. Instead of scurrying to him like a vassal, she orchestrated an entrance even more magnificent than her carpet trick. She sailed up the river Kidnus in a golden barge with purple sails and silver oars. She was dressed as the goddess Aphrodite, surrounded by attendants dressed as nymphs and cupids. The scent of perfume wafted from the boat to the shore. The entire city of Tarsus emptied out to witness the spectacle, leaving Mark Antony sitting alone in the marketplace. He had summoned a queen, but a goddess had arrived. Antony was completely captivated. Just as with Caesar, this was both a romance and a powerful political alliance. Antony and Cleopatra became the ultimate power couple of the ancient world. They spent a winter together in Alexandria, feasting and celebrating, forming a society they called the Inimitable Livers, dedicated to a life of pleasure and luxury. But beneath the opulence, they were forging a plan for a new world order. They envisioned a grand Eastern Empire, ruled from Alexandria, as a rival to Rome. They had 3 children together, and Antony controversially declared them, along with Caesarian rulers of vast territories in the Eastlands, that Rome considered its own. This act, known as the Donations of Alexandria, was a direct challenge to his rival Octavian back in Rome. Octavian, a master of propaganda, seized the opportunity. He painted Cleopatra as a decadent foreign sorceress who had bewitched a noble Roman general. He portrayed Antony as a traitor who had abandoned his Roman wife, who happened to be Octavian's own sister, for this exotic queen. The narrative was simple and effective. It was a battle for the soul of Rome, a clash between the sober virtues of the West and the corrupting luxury of the East. The conflict finally came to a head in 31 BC at the naval battle of Actium. It was meant to be the decisive clash, but it ended in disaster for Antony and Cleopatra. Their large, heavy ships were outmaneuvered by Octavian's lighter, more agile fleet. For reasons still debated by historians, Cleopatra's squadron fled the battle, and Antony, seeing her leave, abandoned his forces to follow her. Their army and navy, leaderless and demoralized, surrendered. The dream was over. They retreated to Alexandria, their world collapsing around them. Octavian's forces closed in on Egypt. Antony, hearing a false report that Cleopatra had taken her own life, fell on his sword. He was carried, dying, to Cleopatra's mausoleum, where she had barricaded herself, and he died in her arms. Now, Cleopatra was alone, her kingdom defeated, the father of her children gone, and her greatest enemy at the gates. Octavian captured her and planned to parade her through the streets of Rome in chains, the ultimate symbol of his victory. But Cleopatra would not grant him that satisfaction. She had lived her life as a queen, and she would die as one. The traditional story, made famous by Shakespeare, says she had an asp, a venomous snake, smuggled to her in a basket of figs. She allowed it to bite her, a death befitting an Egyptian monarch, as the snake was a symbol of divine royalty. Whether it was a snake or poison she had hidden, the result was the same. Cleopatra died in August of 30 BC. Her son Caesarion was hunted down and executed by Octavian, who coldly remarked, "To Caesars are one too many." With her death, the 3,000-year-old history of the pharaohs came to an end. Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire. So, who was the real Cleopatra? A temptress who brought down great men, or a capable ruler who used every tool at her disposal, her intelligence, her charm, her wealth, and yes, her relationships, to try and save her kingdom from being swallowed by a larger power? The history we have was written by her enemies, the Romans. They created the image of the seductive femme fatale to justify their conquest. But if we look closer, we see a queen who fought fiercely for her country's independence, a mother who fought for her children's future, and a brilliant politician who played the great game of power against the most formidable men of her time and very nearly won. She was the last pharaoh of Egypt, and her story, a breathtaking saga of ambition, love, and loss, continues to fascinate us more than 2 millennia later. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to ancient Egypt. If you found this story as captivating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into history's most incredible tales. Let me know in the comments what you think about Cleopatra. Was she a hero or a villain? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay curious.